Set, go. All right, we're going to show you guys how to do the brake pads and the calipers on a four-wheeler. They're all basically the same. This is a Kawasaki 650 Prairie. So just do a real quick lesson on that. So what we're going to do is basically first is you want to make sure to set your parking brake up on your handle there, and then you want to chalk your wheels. Once you do that, first break these loose. They're 17 millimeters, 4 of them. Break them loose, and then you can jack up the four-wheeler. Once that's jacked up, you can just basically take off the nuts, 17 millimeter, set this to the side. Kind of remember which side was facing out because some of the tires are directional. So you want to make sure you know not to lay it opposite because some of them you can't tell. So make sure that the directional is going, of course, forward. So we're going to set that aside, knowing which way, up and out. And what we're going to do now is go ahead and take this cap off. Here, it just pops right off. There you go. And there's a little center nut here that holds that hub on, and then basically this is one assembly. We'll have to separate this from this later. I'll show you that. Here's the caliper. This is held on by two 12 millimeter bolts in the back. There's one up top and there's one right here in the very center. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but there's one, you'll see a 12 millimeter and then one right here. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. There's this center one's at 1 1/16 if it's standard. I'm not sure what the metric size is, but it's 1/16. So it's basically a cotter pin running through it for safety. So what you want to do is take a pair of needle nose, and then we're gonna get that out of here. Let's see here, get it kind of in there, bend it up. So this is going to turn when you go to loosen this. So what you have to have is you have to have a pry bar, and you have to set it right in between here, the actual rotor itself, and here, and you will have to basically set it on the left side, and that is right underneath here. So basically now we're going to go ahead. So this is free spinning, so we crammed a pry bar up in here to basically keep this from spinning. Now it won't spin. And now we're just going to break this loose. I got a 1/2 inch drive breaker bar. There we go. It's a 1 1/16 socket. So we'll set this aside with the cotter pin and the cap all together. That way we don't misplace it. All right, now that that's loose, we can go ahead and remove the caliper. The caliper, once again, is those two 12 millimeters. So what we'll do is we'll get a little 1/4 inch ratchet. There is a actual, right here, you'll see there's, on this Kawasaki 650, you'll see that there's a little access shaft right here. I'm gonna point to it right in here. So you can slide your ratchet and your extension right inside that little hole to where you can reach that 12 millimeter right in there. Let me get in there. Millimeter bolts, and we just freed the caliper from the actual rotor. We're just going to set that aside for now. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to actually remove the breaker bar that we had sitting there to keep it from spinning. Now this is free, so now we can just basically take a mallet and a 2x4 and we can just bang this out. So that's what we're going to do next. All right, so basically this would free up your caliper and your little hub here away from your axle. Your axle's just going to sit inside there, and you will notice that there's a wheel bearing right there. So that gets up a lot of crap in there. So what I do is I take a wire brush and I kind of brush it out. You'll get a little bit of dirt on your axle, but what we're going to do to get that off is we're going to use that little air compressor, air gun, and just blow that off of there. If you don't have air, you can just basically use some WD-40 or some PB blaster just to free it up. But we want to make sure that axle, these grooves don't have that dirt on there. So we're going to use air and blast that off. now that we've cleaned that up, basically we're going to leave it be for a minute, and then what we're going to do is we're going to this caliper, I keep saying caliper, but this rotor is basically attached to this hub with just an Allen, 4 Allen screws. They're 6 millimeter. Now make sure where the inset is, the writing is in the same exact spot when you put the new one on. So right here, say 3 millimeter on mine, because mine's 3 millimeters in length or in depth or thickness. So make sure that matches when you put it on. There's actually little grooves where this is flush on here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it. It's kind of tough to do this, but I have a vise. I recommend having a vise, and you can set this in a vise, and you can put the 6 millimeter Allen wrench in there and just break it with that. I put a little bit of PB blaster. I'll go ahead and set it over there and record over there as well.
Action. Yep,
okay, so 6 millimeter, I got this in a vise. So I'm gonna put the 6 millimeter Allen wrench in there. And what I have is like just a spare piece of steel that can go inside there, because they are in there pretty good. I just use that for extra torque, just to kind of break them loose. And that's all you need to do. Then you can just take this off and of course continue on undoing them. So that's all you got. Just continue doing that for the next 4, and then we'll go to the next step.
Action.
All right, so we got the old rotor off, and there is some red seal tightener, basically thread sealant right here. Basically it's a thread locker in red, high strength Permatex. It was on the bolts that was in there. So basically just regular, anybody, yep. So basically we're going to put a little bit on the bolts, and then we're going to tighten them up back up.
We're rolling.
All right, we got the actual the rotor onto the actual hub, and then we just slid this back in. Just slide right back over that axle. That's double that axle. So now I'm just gonna I'm not gonna bolt this down in all the way. I'm just gonna keep it kind of loose, because it's actually easier if you leave it kind of loose, because you can actually just replace the pads, because you have to slide it over. I'll show you here in a minute in the video. We're just gonna keep that there. That way we don't mess up any threads messing around moving this. So basically now we got to replace the brake pads. Okay, on the caliper, you'll notice there's a little pin right here. You'll need to pull this pin out. It's right behind where this is, this little 5 millimeter end. Don't pop it off and let it fly over the shop, which I normally do. And then basically this right here, this is not even really screwed in. You can just take this and just pull this straight out. When you do that, that will loosen up all the brake pads. So this one basically goes in and slides in and out like this. This will come in, so lay it here so you can match your new brake pads to that. This lower one here has a clip that's attached to the back. As you can see, there's a clip right here. Do not lose that clip or bend it. So we're going to set them just like we see them. We pulled them off. I'm going to set them down right here, and then we're going to take our brake pads, the new ones, we're going to match them up and make sure everything's fine. So as you can see, there's a bunch of trash and garbage in there, grass and mud and whatnot. And what we're going to do is we're going to clean that out with the air gun. We've tried to press these in before, and basically when you push these down, if you push this one down, this one comes up, and vice versa. You push this one down, this one pops up. So I take some channel locks and I do press them in as hard as I can to get them loosened up. And then you have to put the back pad in, the first pad in, put it over, and then you're going to slide this other last pad in over this notch. You're going to slide it down. So we'll come back to that. Okay, so basically what I do is that this caliper is loose, so I put it in. The first pad's already in. This is swivel. This is on a swivel. So what I did is I snuck the last one in over here. Took this and I put it in like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of cram it in between right here. Boom, it should fall into place, and these holes will line up down here. And then this hole, this 12 millimeter bolts, make sure to line those up. So that's what we're going to do next. But actually, no, first what we're going to do now is we're going to put this pin back in right here. And this is going to slide in. So make sure you can see this little hole on this back side. So we're going to slide this in, make sure it goes in both of the pads. It will go all the way in. If you want to come on this side now.
Action.
All right, so we got the brake pad in, back pads in. I just put the, you got to put this little 5 millimeter back in, and that little safety pin that goes in right behind that. I'll see if I can get it pretty close to showing you that pin. Right here. There's a little cotter pin looking deal. See if it'll focus. Right here. Gonna make sure that goes back in. And then you are set there.
Action.
All right, all you gotta do, once that's back on, this bottom's in, 12 millimeter, two of them back in, you're good to go. All you gotta do is just start tightening up your actual hub. Don't forget your cotter pin that goes in, and then put your wheel back on and you're all set.